looks like there was a little bit of a glitch there. I've actually noticed in the last few Facebook Live videos that I've seen, mine last week, and then I've seen a few other folks that have done them this week, that the first few seconds of the video, there's no audio. So if that's happening right now, I'm sorry. I know audio will kick in here in the next few seconds. So hang with me, and sorry about that. Nothing I can do about it. But hey everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to be with you tonight. Had such a fun night here at my house. My son, I have an almost 3-year-old. He'll be 3 in December, and like every night is a dance party at our house. So my husband's really into vinyl, so we'll put on a record. Tonight it was Squirrel Nut Zippers, and we just dance around and have so much fun. So I love that. So hope wherever you have been this evening, or some of you, I guess, West Coast, you're kind of just maybe ending your work day, that you've had fun. Patty, thank you for saying you can hear me. Okay, great. Glad to know that. Well, tonight I wanted to try something a little bit different. And rather than just open it up for questions and answer questions, I wanted to kind of come with a topic of a few things that, I can talk about, and then that might spur on some questions that you might have. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make it quicker tonight than I did last week. I'm hopeful that I can maybe get through my top 3 things. Tonight's topic is the top 3 things you can do as an author before publishing your book. So I'm going to get through those top 3, and then, so as you think of anything, just type in your question in the comments below, and I'll answer those like kind of after I go through my 3. But as anything spurs for you, please do put your comments in, and I'll answer them. And first of all, before we get going, I want to see where everyone's from. I see some folks joining. I'm so excited about that. So in the comments, if you wouldn't mind, just say hey, tell me where you're from. I would love to know who's here with me. So say hi. I'm in Atlanta, if that's helpful. Anybody? Oh, Patty, Minnesota. Hey, Patty. Thanks for being here. Who else? I see other people here. Shelly. Yay, Shelly, glad you're here. Brent. Hi, Brent. Amy. Hey, Amy is my sister-in-law, so gotta love it when your family shows up. That's great. Allison, oh my goodness, Malabar, Florida. So Allison, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, if you know where that is. I'm not actually sure where Malabar is, but I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you. And Sarah and Brent, I love you guys. Sarah and Brent are the sweetest couple. They do awesome videography, so and they travel all over. So shout out to Brent and Sarah. Glad you are here, Brent. Thanks. And Shelly, hey, old friend. She's here in Georgia too. So thank you, really. I hope that this will be helpful for all of you that are here. 2 hours south of Jax. Awesome, Allison. Well, very cool. So let me just dive in. I don't want to keep you too long tonight. But again, as we go, any questions, just like you're doing right now, add them in the comments and I will tackle them at the very end. So again, the topic I'm covering tonight is the top 3 things I feel are the best things to do before your book publishes as an author. And this applies to both fiction and nonfiction. So there'll be some variances in some of this stuff that I'm going to talk about, which I'll get into more specifically. But number 1, what I think is a great thing to do is to establish what I call a top 20 list. And if you get really aggressive, you might make it a top 50 list, but start with a top 20 list. And this top 20 list consists of any of the following or a combination of all of these. It's bloggers, podcasters, other authors that are on social media that have a significant or more, following than you currently do, and start following their stuff really closely. And so look at those folks that maybe not even are in your specific niche or market, but there would be some crossover, meaning, say you have a topic that maybe there's a blogger or a podcaster that doesn't specifically talk about what it is you're writing about, but there'd be some interest, that there'd be crossover. And there's a few reasons for why you want to establish this top 20 list. One, it's a great way for you to research what other people are doing in the same industry. So other writers, bloggers, podcasters. You can get a sense of the stuff that they're putting out, the frequency. So especially if you're looking at it, not just from a consumer standpoint, which is great because that can spur on some ideas for you, but also from a author perspective, kind of putting on your marketing hat and watching what they're doing to help, give content to their audiences. And so that's one reason. The other reason is you should start following them and commenting on their stuff, sharing their material, kind of patting them on the back, because the more you do that further in advance of when your book comes out, the more likely they are to know who you are if you're constantly contributing, commenting on their posts, wherever that may be. So even if they, put something on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and not doing this like a stalker, I don't mean that, but just when it's appropriate and when you have something intelligent to add to the conversation, or if you think it's really great and you want to share it with your audience, like doing all of that stuff as consistently as you can with that list of 20. And that doesn't mean you can't look at anyone else, but if you can be, just focusing in on those 20, I think it's super helpful for you to narrow it down a bit. And easy ways to do that, to track those people, can be, if they're bloggers, you can set up an RSS reader so that you're not having to go to 20 websites a day, to search and see if they've posted a new blog. A lot of folks too also have an email subscription list. So if you subscribe to their email, which I would encourage you to do, even if they aren't publishing their blogs to email, some people will do an email newsletter and get on their lists, again, just to see what they're putting out, research, but also as a way of being engaged in their community and their content. So setting up an RSS reader, if you utilize Twitter and that's a social medium that you like and enjoy, there are easy ways for you to set up a list in Twitter. And if you don't know how to do that, just search for like creating a list in Twitter. And that way you can keep it private. So it can just be a list of those 20 people so that you can click through and see that list and see only the tweets that those 20 people have posted. So again, it narrows it down and doesn't make it so overwhelming, so you're seeing their content. So that's the first thing. So creating a top 20 list. And so there's several reasons, like I said, research, seeing what they're doing content-wise, you may get some ideas. But another reason why you want to do this far in advance, as far as you can, of publishing your book, is the idea that you may reach out to them for help promoting your book when the time is right. And the more that you're giving to their community now on the front end of all of that and really adding value to them, the easier that ask will be. And the more likely they may be to recognize your name because you've been commenting and been, actively sharing their stuff. So that, that's a great reason as well to follow those people. So that's the top 20 list. Again, if you're really ambitious, you can go higher, but start with 20 and build from there if you nail 20. Number 2 is to blog or podcast consistently. And so I know that depending on if you're on the nonfiction or fiction side, this may feel, you may not have a blog. Some of you may already be blogging, and podcasting has become popular too. And this could be just your medium preference. Some folks love just talking. And so it's much easier for them. They love that medium. Even though they're writing a book on a consistent basis, it's better and easier for them to podcast. Some people love just writing blogs. But either way, I would encourage you, if you don't already have one, to set up a blog for starters. That might be simpler, again, depending on who you are, than it is to podcast. But either way, you can do some research and find out. Each are, depending upon your tech abilities, not super hard to do, but blogging is probably easier. So I would just encourage you to consistently be doing that on a weekly basis if possible, and pick a consistent day to publish, because your audience will start to get used to expecting when your next post will come out, and it'll help you get into a rhythm too. And there's an expectation that every Thursday you need to publish a blog. and just start doing that really consistently. And ideally, you would do it on your own site versus other sites like Medium or Huffington Post or Forbes. There are those, and those aren't bad to do, but not at the expense of your own blog. Reason being, it's like, think of your blog and your website as your home. And all of those other places are places you want to visit and you want to get people pointing back to your site. But setting up shop on someone else's site that could, go down. I mean, it could. It's not highly probable, but Facebook could shut down, Medium could shut down, and you suddenly don't have an audience anymore. And so if you want to blog on those other platforms, which can be better exposure if you're going to get more eyeballs on them there than you would on your own site, just be thinking about it as a means to an end. And that end being getting them back to your site to read your content there, and ideally to be opting into your email list. And so that's number 3. Build an email list. And so some of you may have heard this. Building a platform, building an email list. And this is where the difference between a fiction author and a nonfiction, it can get a little tricky. I think it's harder you have to be a little more creative as a fiction author to get folks signed up and subscribed to your email list, but there are ways to do it. And then on the nonfiction side, it's pretty easy to think about ways that you can produce something in terms of a weekly newsletter. You can be offering like a digital download, something you can create like a quiz. I've found that things that have like a self-discovery asset built into them, so you can offer a quiz, like discover your top color. There's all kinds of crazy quizzes out there, but do something that obviously melds with your brand and your content, and offer that. And those are actually pretty simple. They don't have to be super complicated things to build, but something that is going to offer value to your audience, and offer that on your website. And I know a lot of this may feel overwhelming. I totally get it. But it really doesn't have to be. Start small. If a quiz is not something that you can do right now, find something else that you can give them. Even if you're consistently emailing them your blog every week, so they can subscribe to get their blog in their email versus, seeing it on your website. The only downside to that is that it's nice to offer someone that subscribes to your email something they wouldn't get otherwise, because that's the incentive for them to subscribe, is because they're getting something else that's not already publicly available, meaning they could set up an RSS reader and get your blog post, without having to subscribe to your email. So if there's a newsletter that has different content in it, that's not just like a regurgitated recap of all of the blog posts that you've published in the last month, something else in addition to that is ideal that you would be emailing them. And the intention behind building that email list is kind of back to what I was saying before, where if you are building, all you're worried about are followers or fans, and building that kind of platform on your social media networks, and not getting email addresses, you really don't have direct communication with your people. So like I said, Facebook could shut down, Twitter could shut down, and even though you've built up potentially thousands of likes or fans on those platforms, if they aren't subscribed to your email, then you have no way of really getting to them. And so the gold really is in building that email list, because that's a long-term solution for you of having a way to directly communicate and market to your audience. And these are people that have raised their hand and said, yeah, I want your stuff. So it's absolutely key to be doing that. And so on the fiction side, so here's where I'll talk just a little bit. I don't know how many of you are fiction versus nonfiction authors. On the fiction side, this is where, because you don't have potentially a lot of nonfiction authors have a larger business behind the book that they're writing. So they may be doing some consulting or coaching or that type of thing. So it's a lot easier to think of some kind of supplemental guide, workbook, that kind of thing that they might offer as a download. Allison's fiction. Okay, awesome. And Patty, I see your question too. So great. I'll get to that in a minute. So on the fiction side, so for you, Allison, you know, here's someone I would really highly recommend you follow. So just know, like, we tend to work with, most of our clients are nonfiction authors. So most of my knowledge is in that space. I'm increasingly, like in platforms like this, I know there are a lot of fiction authors that obviously really want to know how to best market and self-publish their books. And there's so many fun, creative ways to do it that frankly you can't do as well with nonfiction. And a guy to follow that I just adore. I just love him so much, and he is so fun to follow. His name's Sean Platt. So if you don't already know him, he has a popular podcast called the Self-Publishing Podcast. And so even if you're not self-publishing, that might be a great thing for you to follow, just to start getting some education about publishing and even marketing specifically fiction books. He does serial fiction, so he will write, and he and his partners produce like crazy amount of books every year. And one of the cool ways, and so this seems a little weird because I'm saying do this before you publish your book, but with fiction, a great way of kind of baking in some marketing and getting people back to your website is to actually, in the book itself, at the end, particularly if you're self-publishing, this is a lot easier, you can put like a call back to your website. You know, come back, sign up to get notified if you're doing a series, or, you know, that kind of thing. And series are great to consider. And a lot of fiction authors are even taking, say they have a larger book, and they think about breaking it down into shorter novellas or just shorter, smaller books, so that they can kind of do some of this marketing strategy. Because you can put a teaser, you know, in the end of that first book. And some people will say, like, try to publish 2 or 3 books at once, which seems crazy. But if you do it this way, to where you break it up, it's not as difficult. So you're putting a teaser in there so that folks come back and subscribe to get notified when the next one comes out. And if you're self-publishing, you may even offer an incentive to those people. Like, if you're on my list, you'll get like some special deal or some special bonus, right, for being on my list and getting the next book. So baking it into that first book can be a great way to do it. And the cool thing about doing series as a fiction author is that you can, you know, the sale of books as you go, it's interesting to see, and this is more so with fiction books than nonfiction books, where your backlist will benefit as well. Backlist being books that you've published in the past. So every new book that you produce, particularly if it's a series, if someone's just kind of coming on board and seeing the newest one, they're going to want to go back and read all the first ones. But even if it's not a series, sometimes they're like, oh, I really loved this book. Think about all the fiction authors you follow. I know if I like one fiction book from an author, I tend to pick up other ones, even if it's not the same story or the same characters or anything like that. So that's the benefit of having several books, is that you'll start to see a lot of your past books pick up momentum and gain sales as new ones are released. So that's a benefit of that. So those are the top 3. So build a top 20 list, blog or podcast regularly so that you can get your content out there. You can even use blogging as a test market. You know, if you are even on nonfiction and fiction side, you can like release excerpts of your work, see how it resonates with your audience. And it's a great way to just start getting used to being out there and in front of people and getting feedback. So be doing that consistently. And then number 3 is concentrating on building that email list in whatever way you can. So that's that. So let me open it up to questions really quick. I was just checking the time. I was hoping I could get off in no more than a half an hour, if not sooner. Not because I need to rush, but just because I want to monitor and be conscious of your time. And these videos can get long for those of you that are watching it later, so I understand that. So, Okay, so any questions, please go ahead, comment in the comments below. Allison, he's not on my list. Great. Yeah, Sean Platt, SeanPlatt, self-publishing podcast, and he has, it's called Sterling and Stone. I think sterlingandstone.net maybe is his website. So you'll probably see all of his podcasts and stuff there. I don't know his partner, but I know Sean personally. He is just awesome guy. So there's a plug for Sean. He's not a client or anything. He's just a fun guy. So that's Sean. And let's see, Shelly, great info. Yeah, and happy to help out. I know, Shelly, you've got some fun questions. You were messaging me about that, about your book and wondering kind of which direction to go. So I'm excited for you. I really want to. I know we talked about that, I think like years ago, which I totally get. I have a project I've been waiting to launch for years, so I get it. It's hard. So any other questions? Oh, wait, Patty, you had one. How often should I send out a newsletter? Great question. You know, I think maybe it depends on how frequently you're already emailing your list. So if you have a list that you've set up where you are emailing them your blog and you're blogging weekly, I wouldn't do anything more frequently than maybe a monthly newsletter. But if you're not emailing them anything else, like they're not getting your blog every week via email, then maybe weekly. The key is to stay in front of them pretty consistently, but not overwhelm them. I wouldn't, unless you're in the middle of some crazy launch for a product or something like that, I would really keep email to a minimum. It's that riding that fine line of staying in touch with them and keeping your list what's called warm, so that if they're subscribing and it's been so long and you've never emailed them, you can get spam complaints because people have forgotten who you are because they never get an email from you. And so suddenly you email them and you may have a lot of opt-outs and a lot of, or a few at least spam complaints, which can really hurt your list. So keep in front of them somewhat regularly, but not too much to when then they also end up unsubscribing because it's too much email. So you can kind of experiment with that, but again, maybe start monthly, see how that, if for a newsletter, see how that goes. If you're not giving them anything else, maybe every other week, that kind of thing. And that's not a hard and fast rule, obviously. You can experiment with that for what's right with you. But so let's see, other questions. Thank you. What's the best way to decide which way to publish, Allison? Yeah. And I think if what you're saying is which way, and maybe you could just comment really quick, do you mean traditional versus self-publishing, or even you want to self-publish but you don't know like which avenue to go within self-publishing? So if you wouldn't mind just clarifying that for me really quick, I can give you more info. And then in the meantime, Patty, and what should be in the newsletter? Good question too. I think I always like to share, I say I, but I mean, I like to tell my clients to add like a personal story at the top potentially that, again, they haven't put in a blog post. And it doesn't have to be personal in the sense of sharing something about their personal life, but just something unique that they haven't put out anywhere else. So maybe leading with that as a little story at the beginning to share. It doesn't hurt at all to share links to your blog posts, but I wouldn't put like all of the actual blog posts in it, but just links to them. It can be a quick little recent blog post and the title, and make the title a link kind of thing. And those go back as far as from your last newsletter. Other ideas could be, depending again on what space you're in, right? So say you are in the health and wellness space. Maybe you have like a fun tip that you want to give out in your newsletter. A tip for, fitness or health, or maybe you have a recipe that's like a healthy recipe that you would want to share. So those are some ideas. On the fiction side, this is where, like the fiction side is a little trickier with this type of thing, just, honestly, but you could even set up something, and this is the hard thing too, if you're doing this in advance of any of your books being published to where no one knows your characters or what you're writing about yet, it might be hard. It might just be hard to get people on a list to begin with. If you happen to be a fiction author that's wanting to build a community with other writers, that could be something you could consider, like building a newsletter that's for like fiction authors where you can offer them some of what you're learning or your process as you go. That might be a way. But again, knowing that ultimately the list you're building is going to be for people that want to buy your book. And not to say that those other fiction authors wouldn't, but you know, there are probably plenty of other people that wouldn't be writers too that you would want to be reaching. So okay, Allison, sorry. I see. Yes, exactly. Oh goodness. Sorry. Didn't know. Meaning exactly to your self-publishing, and you want to know which avenue to pursue within self-publishing. Sorry, I moved on and I didn't get your answer in time. So sorry about that. Self or traditional. So either, okay, gotcha. So this is, and I talked a little bit about this in my video last week. There are definite pros and cons to self or traditional publishing. So if you want, maybe, you know, I'll talk a little bit about it now, but if you want to check the video from last week that's on the page, like right below this one, there's some info there about that. But the quick down and dirty answer to this is self-publishing, you obviously have complete control of your book, which can be a pro or a con. The pros are, you know, you can title it whatever you want. You can have the cover design be whatever you want. You know, you can get to market really quickly, meaning, you know, if you had the book ready now, you could literally put it up on Amazon and it could be live tomorrow. Whether or not that's a good idea is another thing, but the speed to market is great. And obviously the royalties you'll receive, you'll make more money off of your book sales, self-publishing, than you will on the traditional side. The distribution is a down, and it's not even as much of a downside anymore. But if you have a dream of your book being on a shelf in Barnes & Noble, if you self-publish, that's virtually impossible. Even a lot of traditional books are not getting shelf space. So 50%, I think that's the newest number, 50% of everybody that buys a book buys their book on Amazon. And then below that, it's like Barnes & Noble, those type of brick and mortar retails, like the big chains, they're somewhere in the teens in terms of percentage. And then in specialty stores like Target, you know, those kind of big box stores, those kinds of places. And then independent bookstores are like in the low, under 10% kind of thing. I think that's, and I'm missing a number in there, I think. But so the vast majority of people are buying their book on Amazon. So if you self-publish, you can go straight to Amazon through CreateSpace, which is the most popular way to publish. Lightning Source, actually now I think it's Ingram Spark. It's not Lightning Source anymore. They're another one. I've heard that the quality of those books is a little bit better in terms of like the print quality and that type of thing. But CreateSpace is great because it's direct to Amazon. It's Amazon's self-publishing arm. And it's not that the quality is terrible. It's just like it's print on demand, as is Ingram Spark. And so it's just the quality of their printing is a little less great. But a lot of people, some people don't even do like a print version. They just want to print, you know, they just want to publish an ebook. And so you can easily do that with Kindle Direct Publishing or KDP, which is through Amazon. You can use vendors like BookBaby to actually take the book. So you would upload the Word document, they could format it, they would turn it into those digital files that you need. An ebook has two formats, a Mobi, that's the file extension, or an EPUB. Mobi is Amazon's format, that's their proprietary format, and then EPUB is like everything else, so Nook and all the other tablets. So you would be able to use them to essentially do everything if you wanted. They would lay out the book, they would convert it to digital format, and then they could literally distribute it so it would show up not just on Amazon, but also on Barnes & Noble and Kobo and like all of those digital sites. So they're a great vendor, in my opinion. I've used them before with other clients, and they do a good job on the digital side. But if you just want to do Amazon, again, knowing that 50% of people buy their books on Amazon, you can do KDP and publish your Kindle version, your Mobi file there. So hopefully that's helpful. Sorry, I didn't answer though on the traditional side. So the keys, the pros to the traditional side are you have great editorial support, and you don't have to incur all of those upfront expenses for, creating your book, laying out your book, distributing your book, printing your book. All of that is what the publisher covers for you, and you'll likely get some amount of an advance. So meaning they buy your book at the beginning and then pay you to write it and publish it. Depending on that advance can really vastly range. If you're a first-time author and you don't really have an established platform or like a fan base of people, I wouldn't expect a lot of money. I mean, I've known a lot of authors to only get a few $1,000s, but then there are outlier situations where I've known some first-time authors that maybe have somewhat of a following, but not even a tremendous following, that have received major advances, and it's surprising. And I think a lot of it just depends on that particular publisher, how they see the book. If they see like this could be a hot button in the market, it's filling a hole in the market, and they may offer you a lot of money on the front end. But I wouldn't expect that. And then obviously the speed to market is a lot slower on the traditional side. You could realistically, from the time you sell your book to them, or you get the deal, it could be 14 months before your book hits the shelves. So that's a long time. If the book, so say, and this has happened too, that's not always the case, but there have been publishers that have sped that time frame up significantly. I've known some to publish in like 8 months. Mostly that's when they see a particular hole in what they call their catalog. So they're looking for a specific type of book to fill a niche within their catalog. So they would offer you a deal and contingent upon you being able to write it and get it to market in like 6 to 8 months. But again, that's less likely. And so, but in general, the speed to market is a lot slower. And of course, your royalties are going to be a lot lower for a traditional deal. So comparison wise, self-publishing, if you go through, Amazon Create Space, you can expect to get 70% of your book price, versus taking that and totally flipping it on its head for traditional, you may get 30%. And depending on if you have an agent, you may be even like splitting that 30%, so getting even less. So, expecting to get rich off of your book, particularly through traditional publishing, is tough. But you're doing it because you love it and you want to get it out there and it's fun. And who knows, you could hit it big and sell millions of copies, and that would be awesome. And I can say I knew you then. That would be great. So hopefully that's helpful, Allison. If anything else pops up, obviously you can keep commenting. I'm going to keep the comments open for the next 24 hours or so. And so anybody, that watches this and has some comments as they're watching, feel free to, or questions, just feel free to add them, and I will, I'll answer them. Gina, thank you for doing this. Oh, thank you for being here, Gina. I really appreciate it. And Brent, thank you. Please tell Sarah hi. And Allison, great. Thank you all. If there's any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because it's over the half an hour I'd hoped to be here. But please do leave any comments below and I will answer them as I get to them. But thank you again so much for being here. Hope it's helpful, and I'll be back again next Wednesday. I'm going to do this every week for now anyway, as long as people want me to. And I'll off. Hey, Rick, great. Thank you're here. Thank you. And we'll see you next week. Everyone have a great night. Have a great week. See you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.